So humans, like other primates, evolved to be social animals. Now there's many evolutionary advantages to being a social animal. It helps us keep ourselves safe from predators, and it helps hunt in groups. But it's not like we really are thinking about that on a day-to-day basis when we're out, hanging out with our friends, enjoying some pool. I can say that I honestly love my friends. And whenever I'm having a conversation, like with the people in this room, it's firing dopamine in the back of my brain and giving me pleasure. So it's not some sort of calculated chess game where I'm trying to make my advantages in life where I get the most access to food and resources. So where does gratitude fit into all this? Well, gratitude is not a thought. Gratitude is an emotion, a feeling. And it happens the most, or it increases, whenever the gift is perceived to be of value. And it occurs whenever someone gives you something that is of value or perceived to be of value. And it's decreased whenever there's a perception of ulterior motives. So someone gives you something, and for instance, maybe they help you move, but if you think, maybe they're just helping me move, so I'll help them move next week, you're not as likely to experience as much gratitude. So there's a paper by Grant and Gino, which talks about the effect of saying thank you. What they did is they got college students, and they paid them a small fee of $10 to participate in a survey type thing, where they sent them another student, quote unquote, which is really just a researcher, sent them one of two messages. Sent them a cover sheet to edit. And after they edited the cover sheet, they would then send it back. And they would receive one or two messages from the student. And it would say either, "Dear so-and-so, I received your letter. Would you mind helping me with another one?" Or it would say, "Dear so-and-so, I received your letter. Thank you very much. Would you mind helping me with another one?" Then they received their $10, and it was voluntary whether or not they wanted to help the student with the second letter or not. And just the act of saying thank you, the sentences were identical otherwise, increased it by about twofold. So 32% of the people who didn't get the thank you responded and helped the other student. 66% if they did get the thank you. So this is kind of graphically depicted. Gets a gift, said thanks, will you help again, versus will you help again. So they repeated this experiment, and they wanted to see what would happen if perhaps the person who was asking for help the second time wasn't the same person who had thanked them, whether or not there'd be effect. So what they did is the experiment was basically the same, except in the very end when they got the thank you or non-thank you statement, it just said, "I received your cover letter, thank you very much," or "I received your cover letter." They received their $10, they filled out the questionnaire they were supposed to fill out. And then a day later, someone else, a different quote-unquote student, said, "Hey, I heard you were working on a project, some research with this group, and I was wondering if you could help me with my cover letter." So it's a different individual. And again, they found about a twofold increase in help. Just from being thanked the first time, they were more likely to help this other anonymous individual, even though they weren't the person who thanked them. And this is graphically depicted. Thanks for helping, will you help me too? Versus, will you help me too, without any thanks. So, very interesting findings there. This paper is the second paper. It takes it a little bit different. It's just on being thankful versus being thanked. And Bartlett and Destino, they took college students also. All these psychological studies use college students because they're cheap. Not that great, but they do. That's what we have. So what they did is they set up students to work in pairs. But again, one of the pairs was really just a experimenter. Although this experimenter was blind to what they were actually studying. And they were set to work on some sort of computer test. The test, they were told it was graded together, but that their efforts would be individual. Near the end of the test, in the experimental group, the other student, the experimenter, would sneakily unplug the monitor of the other student without them noticing. So then the person giving the test would walk in, see the monitor was unplugged, and go, "Oh, that sucks to be you. Try it on this computer, and you'll have to start all over again." Well, the experimenter who had unplugged it will then look at the monitor and go, "Oh, it's just your monitor's unplugged." They'll plug it back in. Then the person feels a little gratitude towards them. They finish up the test, And in the control group, that didn't happen. They just finished up the test. They had a mild, neutral conversation. Well, what happened was afterwards, they would meet that same student who helped them with the monitor or who didn't outside, and they would tell them that they're working on, I think for sociology, it was a survey they needed help with for their class. It would take about 30 minutes. It may even take longer. You can fill out as much of it as you like, but as much time as you'll spend on it, that's going to help me even more. So what they find? Well, they found that you got about 8 minutes difference from the person helping them. The person who was experiencing gratitude, so they helped them about 8 minutes longer than if they hadn't helped them, and it was just a neutral conversation. There was never a problem. So they also repeated this experiment, and also repeated it with a third party. So the experiment was basically the same, except for the person outside wasn't the person who had helped them. It was a neutral third party, and surprisingly, the feeling of gratitude made them help the third party longer than if they didn't feel gratitude. And so this kind of takes away maybe that it was just a tit for tat, you helped me, so now I feel obligated to help you. It was an emotional state. And they did some other things to rule out other emotional states. It wasn't just that they were in a good mood. Actually, being in a good mood makes you less likely to help someone because it costs you more. It costs you your good mood, if it's going to be. Go figure, right? So, gratitude has a pro-social role. It increases our interactions with each other. It increases the odds that someone will help out, even though in the short term it's going to cost them some time, energy, effort, whatever. It often creates a desire to spend more time with an individual. There was another study, and I believe it was Switzerland, it may have been Sweden, I get those confused, I'm sorry, in which they asked 2,000 elementary school kids to imagine that someone had given them something that they always wanted. And then they asked what they would like to, or what their emotional state was, what they would like to do. And a lot of them did respond in a tit-for-tat kind of way. They said, well, I would need to give them something, or I feel like I would want to give them something. But more importantly, a lot of them also said that they would want to spend more time or play a game with them that they thought they would both enjoy. And it's thought that that gratitude plays a role in relationship building and seeing if someone is going to be acceptable to the relationship and whether or not they're going to contribute to it. So that's all I have, and now off to Zach.